Hello, everyone. Welcome to Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbale in Abuja. We're keeping tabs on the Justice Ekwebi-led Lagos panel on answers, which submitted its findings to the Lagos State government. But the government says it will come out with a white paper on the report of the panel. And it's just about 4 days to the release of the white paper. We have our eyes on the matter. We're keeping tabs on it. Let's tell you that the call to tag bandits terrorists appear to have gone well, considering the efforts of the Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, who said that the federal government's determination to crush banditry remains unwavering now that the court has granted application filed by its office declaring bandits groups as terrorist organizations. The statement from the Minister's office states, quote, "The development is a pointer to the commitment of the federal government to adhere to the international standards in respecting the rules of engagement in the fight against terrorism, separatist organizations, insurgency, and banditry in the country." End of quote. The government will publicize the prescription order. It's now time for your political roundup stories.
The Northeast Development Commission is proposing to construct 18 mega educational institutions across the 6 states of the geopolitical zones. Addressing the Northeast Caucus of the National Assembly, the Managing Director of the Commission, Mr. Mohammed Al-Khali, explains that funding is a major constraint to actualizing the plan. He calls on the National Assembly to review the NEDC Act to increase the Commission's statutory allocation from value-added tax collection to 5% from the present 3%. 1 week to local government elections in Ekiti State, the electoral umpire says the People's Democratic Party will not be sponsoring candidates in the poll. The chairman of the State Independent Electoral Commission at a media briefing in Ado Ekiti explains that the PDP earlier showed a last-minute interest in picking up forms for notice of intention in the poll, but failed to show up and collect the forms as promised. The Minister of Defense, Major General Bashir Magashi, is asking graduating members of Course 5 to deploy their knowledge in the ongoing fight against insurgency and other threats to national security. The minister, who was represented by the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Defense, made the call at the graduation ceremony for members of Course 5, Nigerian Army War College in Abuja.
I tell you that the federal government will start paying subsidy on fuel beginning from next year. The Minister of Finance, Ms. Zainab Ahmed, has made that decision public earlier in the week, and the modalities have also been announced. Let me remind you of what she said earlier this week.
We also agreed that the remittances have to be done digitally. So the e-Naira will help, but also so are the various payment platforms that are currently available. What we will not do is paying people in cash. So it will be transfers that people will receive through one kind of electronic money or the other. And it's meant to be for a period of 6, 9, or 12 months. So these are things that we're still negotiation, because it's still money that will have been for the Federation account. So everybody that is a member of FAC has to agree on the numbers. The maximum will be 12 months. The minimum will be 6 months. We thought it was important to do this to give people a chance to adjust before the other support measures that federal government is working on materialize, and that is the provision of alternative to PMS, which is CNG, that is having mass transit vehicles transferring converted to CNG. And from the experience that we have had on the conditional cash transfer, it shows that 5,000 naira that some people think is small actually makes a difference to families. It helps them to provide not only their basic needs, but we've seen women who are caregivers of these families actually start doing small trades, and they're able to maintain themselves.
And why that announcement appears not to have been captured in the 2022 budget. That's according to one of the lawmakers who He's in the Appropriations Committee. Take a listen to Senator Solomon Adeola on this issue of the subsidy.
For us, we still believe it's still in news because this budget we are considering contains subsidy. And if we are passing a budget already that have subsidy already contained in the document, we cannot speak because that is the document that is currently before us. And for this, you have said yes. Some quarters says the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and was quoted saying that 40 million Nigeria will be paid $5,000 and 5,000 naira as transportation allowance in lieu of the fuel subsidy. I don't want to go into these details for now. I believe that if such proposal is to come to pass, a document to that effect must be sent to the National Assembly for us to see how possible, how visible, if this is, and how do we identify these 40 million Nigeria that are going to benefit from this process. There are still a lot of issues to be deliberated upon and looked into if eventually this will come to pass. And how do we raise this money to pay these 40 million Nigerians? Because I know that even at the subsidy or revenue being raised, are money that are coming in from these so-called oil and other sources of revenue to the federal government. So how do we? This is not provided for already in the budget as we have. We don't have anywhere in the budget where 40 million Nigeria at 5,000 naira equals this amount of about 2.4 trillion contained in that budget. And I know there must be a budgetary provision for this for us to consider. That's why I said it's still a news.
Senator Solomon Adeola there, speaking on whether or not the plan for subsidy removal was captured in the budget. Of course, the 5,000 transport subsidy is also mentioned. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Association of Students are also speaking about this matter. Take a listen to their argument on the issue of the subsidy.
We reject the so-called allowance for the 40 million Nigerian people in totality. And it's merely an attempt to add a new dimension of economic woe upon Nigeria through this removal of subsidy. We wish to state further that before federal government can take any decision on the removal of the subsidy, it must be first demonstrated goodwill by ensuring that the NNPC makes the 4 refineries we have in this country work at full capacity so that to determine the exact cost of refining the product in the country and why we have to continue importing refining petroleum products in our country. Nigeria cannot continue to use this cost of implication of the petrol as a benchmark for determining the appropriate price of the product, especially the PMC, since it refined in our dear country, will not involve the same cost as important of refined products. Nigeria will be shut down should the federal government attempt to remove the fuel subsidy as allegedly being proposed. I repeat, Nigeria will be shut down should the federal government attempt the removal of the fuel subsidy as allegedly being proposed.
You heard the students there. What does this mean? The issue of the removal of subsidy, very sensitive matter over the last few years in this country. But experts will tell you it's something that needs to be done. But how do we go about it? Is the federal government, has the federal government taken the right move? Where do we head, considering the inflation rate presently in the country? Let's get talking and get into the details of this matter. Tonight, I'm being joined by someone who has worked within the oil and gas sector, Alhaji Yabaji Sani, who is also the national chairman of ADC. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
ADP.
ADP.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, sir.
And virtually, we have an economist, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. Thank you so much, Mr. Chukwu, for your time today. Let's get talking. For some people who think this should have happened. I remember when the former Emir of Kano was the minister. I mean, the CBN governor. This debate was heated. In fact, it cost a former government its re-election because it took the Nigerians to the streets because people debated and argued that this should not happen. The P and a lot of programs are being set up in the aftermath of this consideration. But do you think it's the right time? What do you make of the present government's decision to remove it?
Sean, I think it shows lack of organization, lack of capacity, and lack of plan where to take this Nigeria to as far as the economy is concerned. Because this government is very much aware of the issue we're talking about today, which is subsidy removal. If you remember, Mr. President was the chairman of PTF. PTF was all about palliatives, because the government then thought it wise that subsidy must be removed, but something should be put in place. So one wonders why, after so many years, and then government that is in place for almost 6 years now, is still battling, still not sure of what really to come up with in terms of the program to address this very, very controversial issue. Sean, believe me, the issue is not even the removal of subsidy. Nigerians have been taken for a ride, I'm telling you. Look into the processes, that's the value chain of the production or even importation of refined products into this country. A sane country, and the responsible government will look into how do we receive these so-called subsidy products. So you take a trip to our jetties. There are no meters, working meters in the jetties. So, and you look at the management of these resources by NNPC itself. I'm telling you what I know for a fact.
So anything that goes through those jetties, nobody knows exactly.
It's not uncountable. No, you can't tell me. They can't tell you
the exact figure.
The exact figure
because
of what
you
what
can't
has
measure
come in.
it.
Exactly. If you can't measure, then you cannot even tell me, how much has come in. So, and that the endemic corruption in that subsidy issue still persists, because we don't have records. Go into NNPC, ask them what is in your depots, what is in the Port Harcourt depots, what is in those jetties, how much have you transferred to this place, where are the meters, how are you measuring what is being transferred? So they're just deceiving Nigerians that they are paying subsidy to themselves, because they are the ones stealing this product we are talking about.
Who are these
That is why
Who are the ones
the operators, the government itself is the one stealing Nigerians' money.
Because
and
I remember,
and then at the same time,
when you say the
Nigerians,
government,
yes.
you want us to substantiate
Yes.
Who exactly in government, because I know you operated in that sector. So subsidy predates this government.
No, I carried out a study, in the downstream, upstream, and midstream sector of this country, of the petroleum industry in this country, to determine whether the metering infrastructure we have is anything reliable or credible. And the findings, even after my study, is still that there are no meters where you should have meters. And where you have one, they are substandard meters. So how do you come to tell Nigerians, why didn't they even repair the refineries in the first instance? That's what the Nigerians would ask.
I think that they say they're doing that.
They are doing that for how long? When did we have this refinery? Since 1983, and then the last one was built.
They gave a timeline for the delivery.
Yeah, but look at we have had these turnaround maintenance things, for so long, and it's all corruption. Sean, I can tell you, for free. The fact of the matter is that the Nigerian government has taken these Nigerians for a ride, too much, and they should zero in on the operations. What is happening in NNPC itself? How are they accounting for these products we are talking about? There's no accountability, really.
I remember that it was Bukola Saraki, then as a senator, who moved the motion on the floor that this subsidy monies goes into
private pockets,
private hands.
Exactly.
It's not. We're paying, Nigeria is paying just a few people.
Exactly.
And the larger population is suffering and bearing the brunt.
Exactly. Look at even the issue of the domestic crude allocation, 450,000 barrels per day. That's supposed to be refined by the refineries that are working. And NMPC found a way to sell these products. They earn commission, and they now go outside again to buy refined petroleum products on behalf of Nigerians and earn commission, which they don't report to us. And then they now bring these products in unaccounted for because no meters. I repeat that. Let somebody tell me that there are meters there. So Nigerians are being taken for a ride. This government should please, taking us for granted.
So you want them to remove it?
Subsidy removal, if subsidy exists. As far as I'm concerned today, you must have accountability before you tell me that I am, spending too much.
So, but the reason, you are saying that the subsidy payment, you don't agree with it because it goes into private hands, it goes into people.
They talk about smuggling.
So the removal is a good idea.
Yes, and then even the quantities they
Isn't
say
it?
that
Removing it is a good idea.
I'm for efficiency in the economy, so we can be competitive. So
you want it to continue being paid?
No, I don't want it to continue being paid.
You want it to be stopped?
But I want the root of the problem to be addressed in the first instance. First, before you now tell me that there's subsidy for me to pay. If for long, as long as we do not address the root of this problem, which is the lack of accountability in NMPC, then we'll continue to have this problem. Even with NMPCL, we still have to ensure that what we are talking about, because private people were importing this subsidy even before then, isn't it? Before NMPC now took over. Yeah. So the point is this: crude oil theft. Petroleum products that are being reported as imported into the country, which are not imported, government must set up a committee to investigate this and then come up with reports on the accountability issue.
All right.
And because government set up a committee at one time, which was headed by the governor of Edo State, that is the economic the council set it up, and the government itself came up with a report that about $1.5 billion of crude oil theft, was reported, in just 6 months. So 1 year, we were living. How much are they telling you today we are losing? They say, RFI say we are losing 250 billion naira, every month. That's what they say subsidy cost to us. Zainab came and said that they are going to spend 200 billion naira, every month. So between them, it's a question of we are going to save 50 billion naira, and you want to put Nigerians through this torturous, process of saying
let's bring in Mr. Johnson Chukwu, the economist. Thank you so much, Mr. Chukwu. Let's look at the economic implications. There are obvious things that will happen if the subsidy goes. Obviously, we'll have increase in price of for petrol majorly, and there are fears about the issue of inflation. First and foremost, let me get your take. What's your take on the action of government or the plan of removal next year?
Shane, thank you for having me. My first take is that it's an inevitable pain we need to go through as a country. It's like what they call a birth pain or child delivery pain that a woman must go through to bring forth a child or bring forth another human being. It can also be likened to a person who has tumor, and the doctor's request asks that the tumor should be removed. Because the tumor is not painful. The person at that point says, no, I don't want the tumor removed. I don't want to go through the pains of an operation. And the tumor becomes cancerous. And they ask you that we need to now do chemo. They need to go through chemo. And maybe at some point they may need to amputate or exercise that part of your body, if it's a part that can be taken out so that you preserve the rest of the body. That's the situation we found ourselves. We've gradually allowed the issue of subsidy to eat deep into our fiscal framework. As it stands today, if you look at government revenue profiles and government fiscal positions, last year the federal government had a deficit of more than 5 trillion naira. The preceding year, 2019, it had a deficit of more than 4 trillion naira. And from what the GMD of NNPC said, we are currently spending about 2.7 trillion naira on subsidy. So if you claw back that amount, the deficit the government has will be less. For what they had last year, less than 3 trillion. But beyond that, Shane, between you and I, you know what you can achieve with 2.8 trillion naira. As it stands today, none of us can actually place our hands on the benefits we've enjoyed as Nigerians for buying petroleum products at lower cost. It has not improved our standard of living. Nigeria's standard of living has continued to worsen. It has not improved the number of people who are extremely poor. We have 98 million people who are extremely poor. From the World Bank, they said about 6 million or 8 million people actually were pushed further into poverty the last 2 years. And that number will keep increasing. More than half our population are among the poorest in the world. So how has subsidy helped us? We have one of the worst network of roads. We have one of the worst network of rail lines. In fact, it doesn't even exist. We do not have quality education. Our education standard has continued to deteriorate. Currently, we cannot fund our police and the military, but then we pretend that we're enjoying some benefit from the subsidy. Just imagine if the federal government is able to conserve 2.8 trillion naira and invest it in just road infrastructure alone. Do you know the number of highways you're going to build? That will touch every Tom, Dick, and Harry. You are going to be able to come and commute from one location to another at a cheaper cost. The cost of maintaining vehicles will be lower, and then the transporter will charge you less. Assuming we put the money on rail lines, standard gauge rail lines, rail tracks, you're going to see a situation where you can move from Kano to Lagos in maybe 6 hours or 4 hours. You don't need to go through the pains of going through a transporter whose vehicle will break down 4 times before getting to Lagos. So, assuming we use it to fund the military or the police, consuming that you really can't place our hands on. And we said, okay, we think it's a patrimony that we don't want to suffer. The truth is that we are not going to build this country to be a competitive economy if we do not have the supporting infrastructure. And you can't have that supporting infrastructure if you are eating up whatever is available to you. So the question we ask ourselves is this: are we going to continue this way? What benefit have we gotten as a people from the subsidy of petroleum products for the past 20 or 30 years or whenever it started? Have our conditions improved, or is our conditions better than what it obtains elsewhere? Are we in better living condition than those Ghanaians who live in Ghana who are paying commercial price for fuel? Are we living better than Kenyans or South Africans or Egyptians? So I'm just talking of fellow African countries. The reality is that we are eating up what they say, you are eating your future today, and your situation is deteriorating. We just have to take a bold. It's going to be a
Mr.
painful
Chukwu,
process.
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, very much. I mean, this has been envisaged for years, and that, look, removing the subsidy to be painful, but it's a necessary thing. So you think that the right time is yesterday to have removed it. But the plan of the government is very critical in all of this. Removing it, you need enough time for the system to adjust to the plan. Also, the passage of the Petroleum Industrial Act is another major factor, because the NNPC as it is presently will be different from what it will be in the next few months. So a lot of factors are going to be very fundamental. Will give us an understanding of what the federal government says it will do. There will be another subsidy. If the subsidy on of fuel is removed, there will be a subsidization of transport. Do you agree with that 5,000 naira monthly? You say it's going to be in the list of 6 months.
Yes, Sheung, initially, I had actually complained that the government needs to define a time frame for it, that you're not going to take our subsidy and replace with another indefinite subsidy. But I was quite happy when I hear the Minister of Finance say it's going to be for 6 months, maximum of 1 year. So there's a time frame to that. And it's basically supposed to cushion the shock that this subsidy removal we're going to have on the most vulnerable of the society. Like I said, you can't avoid the pain that we're going to go through as a people. You're going to see deterioration in standard of living. But if the savings from this subsidy is invested wisely, then you are going to see a situation where we will build roads, we will build infrastructure, we will strengthen our power supply grid, and then we'll become a productive economy. And all those who are collecting handouts will be gainfully employed. They will have increase in their salary because they are more productive. And that is where any economy should be moving towards. It's not necessarily handouts. Handouts is a stopgap arrangement just to cushion a dislocation in the system. But ultimately, we should be focusing on how do we build an economy that creates jobs. We have 45% of our Nigerian of our youths unemployed. We have 3.3% of all our total labor force unemployed, plus 22.8% underemployment. We need to give them jobs. We need to build an economy that is producing to export to other countries. So that's only time you're going to win people out of the need to depend on the government. But if we continue with what we're going to do, we're going to deteriorate, our condition will deteriorate. So I accept that I will go through pain. You go through pain. A lot of us will go, everybody will go through some pain, but it's a necessary pain we need to go through to restructure our economy and begin to build the structure that will support productive activities, that will support creation of employment.
There's something fundamental because, as an economist, this is very critical. Inflation is in double figures. It's been falling for the last 6 or 7 different measurements. So, if you look at for about 6 or 7 consecutive months now, it's been falling, but it's still about 15% the inflation rate. The question, some experts will argue, is that if you put monies into the hands of people, that might cause some kind of inflation too. If you remove the subsidy, that might cause there might be some shock within the system. It's like you are within the devil and the Red Sea. So how can the federal government? It's a good idea to remove the subsidy because, I mean, people argue it goes into the hands of just a few people.
Which is akin to a tumor that had become cancerous. What is the best time to exercise that part of the body? What is the best time to go for chemotherapy? Chemotherapy is a very painful process. Is it better to just allow the cancer to fester until it eats up, it goes into the bloodstream and kills the body, the entire body, or to take that pain? Maybe, like I said, maybe in 2012, it was just a non-cancerous tumor that could have been taken out in 2012. But unfortunately, because of political experiences, even those who knew better, who knew that it was a wrong thing to continue subsidize, came out and shut down the country. Today, as we speak, I hear the students' union said we're going to shut down the country. But if they do, maybe in the next 10 years, maybe in the next 20 years, they're going to be the ones begging the citizens that the subsidy needs to be removed, assuming we still have an economy to work with by then. The reality is that there's no perfect time. The perfect time would have been last year. Like I said, the best time to plant a tree was yesterday, but the next was 10 years ago, but the next best time is today. Today, we just have to face this challenge as a country so that we build an economy that works. Our country does not work. Our economy does not work today. Shame, we're not creating employment. We're not a productive economy. Some of those challenges we have are because we have an incentive system that does not encourage productive activities. And subsidy is one of those incentives. No system subsidizes consumption of a product they don't produce. If it's something you produce and you want to stimulate more demand, you can subsidize the product you produce locally, but you are subsidizing the product you are not producing. For that reason, we don't have refineries working in the country because nobody can set up a refinery, local refinery. I'm not talking about export-oriented refinery. Set up a local refinery and expect that government will buy the product from you. Because if they don't buy it from you, you can't sell it because government is subsidizing the product. So refinery have used to work, petrochemicals can work. We do not have the local input for a lot of things, including the paint industry we have produced locally. Today, we are spending 15% of our import on importation of a product we produce the raw material. And we still want to go ahead with that. Our currency had deteriorated from just a couple of years ago, it was 118 naira to $1. Today, we're talking about 500 something, 560 naira to $1. It had deteriorated because we're not exporting enough. We keep importing, including the products we should import, which is refined petroleum products. And we're still living, every day we're complaining our currency is depreciating. But we know we're the one eating the children of those who should have made the currency strong. And then we are complaining. And we're waiting for the best time. The best time will never come. If you have a difficult situation like what I give reference to, where you have a cancerous tumor, you just have to exercise it now. Irrespective of whether it will involve an amputation. It's better you amputate that limb than you get to a point where you need to be talking about burial of the whole body.
We need to take a break now, but when we come back, the federal government has a subsidy, another planned subsidy to remove the subsidy. So also because what to cushion the after effect of the subsidy removal. We looked in details into that because you heard what the student association are saying, that if they remove subsidy, they will shut down the country. They will go on the street. What is Labour saying about it? As Labour agree, we hear from the side of Labour, and we look at some other holistic matter on this issue of the subsidy. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us on the program. Our conversation tonight is about the removal of subsidy on fuel, a matter that has generated loads and loads of controversies and reactions. First, the federal government has made the announcement following a lot of agitation that fuel subsidy should go, and they've given a date and a time for that to happen. What will they do in the for the aftermath of that? They've said there's going to be a subsidy on transportation, 5,000 to be paid to several millions of Nigerians, at least for 6 months, the least of 6 months. It will be more than that. So we're getting to talk about what is the implication. Nigerian students said they will shut down the country should that happen. What is the Labour saying? Let's hear from all sides tonight. We've had Engineer Yabaji Sani, who is the national chairman of the ADP, and Mr. Uche Ekwe is the head of international relations at the NLC, Nigerian Labour Congress. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And virtually, we've been speaking with an economist, Mr. Johnson Chuku. Thank you so much, Mr. Chuku. Let's hear from the side of the Labour. What is the position of the NLC on this?
Our position is clear. We cannot accept the regulation that is based on importation. It doesn't make sense. All the argument looks funny, and it sounds that people are not living with some basic reality. And I find it strange that people, and this is a call we started from since the days of IBB to now, that the refineries must work, and we must get our refineries to work. First, we have all the huge challenge of unemployment. Refining at home, every single fuel we import as an oil-producing nation means job exported. I don't know why that conversation is not at the front burner. Because if we refine it, you have job. And we're not talking about the other byproducts that will come out of refining the petroleum product. Now, we're not talking about all that. And you want us to buy fuel, which we sell, and when I hear people say, oh, fuel will now become 360, first, that doesn't hold waters because it is dependent, we all know, on exchange rate and the cost of crude at the international market, which means if by the so-called period set, PMS is to sell in the so-called deregulation 360 naira per liter, it means that as at this moment, when the exchange rate is about 560, it means if it becomes 580 the next week, we are going to buy about 400 naira. If the exchange rate doesn't go down, and there is an increase in the price of sale of crude, again, the price of the refined product will also increase. It means we will buy higher again. So even 360 is not it. It means that in the next 1 week, it can sell at 400 naira. I overheard a bit of the argument of the person talking on the other side, saying, no, we don't subsidize about 30% people, that is just few people. And those arguments of the World Bank and some elite shows the massive gap between some of the elites and the World Bank to the reality of our situation. When you say, oh, it's only few people, I take it that they are assuming we are either in the United Kingdom or in the United States, where if you increase the price of petroleum product, it will just be car owners that we know. And in those climes, Take, for example, in the UK, somebody may have bought a bus ticket for 1 year. So even if the pump price is increased, that person never get to know. But you are dealing in an economy, when they talk about that 30%, that if you increase the price of petroleum today, by evening, the poor woman in the rural village who have produced tomato will need to put it in a pickup van that will bring it to the city where you will sell. And the pickup driver that used to carry him or her, say 30 naira to the destination, now say no, to transport you to where you sell your tomato is 500 naira.
So invariably, the removal of subsidy will affect price of fuel. The price of fuel will cause the rise in food prices and other commodities.
Yes.
Invariably, it will reduce the purchasing power of the
everybody.
average Nigerian.
Then
but the question I would
side.
like to ask you, sir,
Yes.
is in comparison to what is obtainable in other climes.
Yes.
In Africa, for example,
Yes.
even in West Africa,
Yes.
Nigeria seems to be Nigerians are buying petrol at the lowest price.
I like when people give those comparisons. Those African countries are talking, are they oil producing? Because that's the key question.
No, if you go to countries that are even oil producing, they sell higher.
Like?
If you go to Saudi Arabia, they sell higher.
Even
in the United States, you buy higher.
No, don't worry, it's okay. And what's the education system? Primary, secondary are free education. Organized transport system, there's electricity. The young girl who finished from university or secondary school, who have decided not to be a nuisance to the society by going to learn how to do hair, who now has a salon where he does hair, because there's no electricity, buys a brother or friends assist to get a small gen, you buy petroleum to use it. The young boy who have graduated in the university and made up the mind that he will not be part of the crisis in the country and now have gone to do barbing saloon. But we need fuel because there's no electricity. Those group of boys, if you take Abuja for example, if you go to the UTC where they do printing, the sound of generators you hear there can make you sick. Those people are shut out.
All right.
The number of people you take out of job by that singular decision. Remember, the level of insecurity today in the country, the funding of the insecurity is from unemployed people. And you want to push many more people into the unemployment.
Let me bring in Johnson Chukwu is still with us. Let me bring him back into the conversation. You heard what the Labour leader here just said about the implication, but I mean, there's going to be a possibility of inflation on two sides. Fuel price will be affected. And of course, those who have argued that if you put monies into the hands of people without productivity, that will add into the inflation issue. What's your take on that?
And I appreciate the comments of the Labour leader, and I want us to dwell on that. When you ask him that petroleum producing countries, crude oil producing countries are paying higher, he countered that by saying, what is the cost of education in those countries? And remember, maybe it may be not good to know that the US is the largest crude oil producer in the world, but also the largest consumer of crude in the world. But now let's look at the fact. The reasons why we cannot provide free education because we are eating it up in fuel subsidy. The reasons why we cannot, the young man in Abuja is doing barbing saloon or doing printing, is running generator, is because we are eating it up in subsidy. The reasons why we're not the question I asked us earlier is that how has our conditions improved because we are subsidizing petroleum products? Have we become one of the most comfortable countries in the world? The standard of living is better than other countries in the world. We have seen consistent deterioration in standard of living because we are misplacing our priorities in terms of how to deploy our national resources. And that's basically what is begging to be answered. Reality is that we cannot continue to subsidize petroleum program, because as long as you continue to subsidize that, you are not going to have money to invest in education. You're not going to have money to have free education that he would deserve elsewhere. You're not going to have money to build the road that will make it easy for the transporter to move goods of the market woman or the farmer from point A to point B at an efficient rate. Because one of the reasons why the pickup guy is charging so much is because his vehicle will break down 10 times before he moves from the rural area to the market area, because there's no road. The money would have used to build the roads is what are consuming in fuel subsidy. And we want to continue that way. As it stands today, the government cannot build infrastructure. Almost all the national highways have collapsed. The government cannot build national transmission grid line. We are toyed with the 750 megawatts of transmission grid line. We can't do that because we don't have the money to do it. Every kobo that the current government is spending on infrastructure is borrowed. Every kobo. All the rail lines we are building are borrowed from the money coming from China. So how long are you going to continue that way? Today, you are amassing up so much debt that we're going to get to a point we can no longer pay interest on our debt, because we want to eat subsidy, we want to enjoy subsidy. And the subsidy is hurting you. Instead of, it's just a simple life. You have your salaries. Your salary is 100,000 in a month. Then you decide to eat everything on food and dress and clothing instead of saving 50,000 and living on 50,000. If you save 50,000 in the next 10 years, you would have built enough. Everything that is produced. And we're now borrowing to survive. And we think that's the way to go because we don't want to go through the pains. We don't want to go through the labor pains. The key thing is that the government has a duty to communicate this to the populace.
Into the conversation. You heard the argument. The labor leader said it. Mr. Johnson as giving an opposing view into that matter. Well, if you don't remove it, there's a problem. If you remove it, there is a problem. The timing is an issue. Where do you think we can go from here?
Well, this is like catch-22 as far as the situation we find ourselves in the country is concerned. But my concern is the fact that we have a basket case of governance in this country. There's no amount of money you bring into this government that will have any positive impact on the nationals. Because we have seen it. We are borrowing, at such a rate that it's so reckless. And what is the impact on the average Nigerian? So the issue is that government must, first of all, take care of this corruption, which is at the bottom of most of our problems that we're talking about in this country. We're talking about that if we remove subsidies, a lot of money will be available for government to invest in building roads and what have you. What about the trillions of naira they've been budgeting? Why has it not been invested in building roads? And when you compare us with other countries, those countries have very, very low cost of living because there's no corruption like we have in this country. I'm for competitive economy. But like the labor leader has said, look at the refineries, the kind of employment that you can generate from those refineries. The responsibility of the government, before this government, is what has led us to where we are today. And now you are not even ready to look into yourself and then check some areas that are responsible for the leakages that we're talking about. This government has not shown any capacity or even any plan or readiness to even check those leakages. If you don't, those huge drain pipes that we have in this economy, if you don't check them, even if you remove this subsidy today, which I know we need to in order to cut out some of this inefficiency that we have in the economy. But the biggest culprit here is the government itself that has failed to tackle the issue of corruption. Bring trillions of naira they are talking about into this economy or into this government. You will see nothing on the table as a positive effect on Nigerians. That is the question. They talk about subsidy. Yes, there's subsidy. But what about the subsidy in the foreign exchange management, the CBN management of foreign exchange? What about the huge amount of money that goes to corruption in the management of foreign exchange that we earn in this country? Those are the areas that you must look into and block those huge drain pipes in our economy before you come and talk about what the poor masses are just benefiting from. They know, everybody knows that we are losing billions of naira in this economy through these leakages, and we see it, and nothing is being done to ensure that we take advantage of what God has given to us in terms of the crude oil and gas, that we have in this country. And all you are talking about is the easiest way out of the situation. Oh, let's just jack up the price. let's deregulate the economy. I mean, the downstream sector. Why don't you regulate the upstream sector where it matters? The billions we're losing there. What are you doing to IOCs? What are you doing to crude oil theft? What are you doing to CBN that is mismanaging our foreign exchange? That are giving money to their friends, and you are not doing anything about that. But the poor masses who have no voice, no control, nobody to talk for them, you now want to load this over them. Can you imagine the kind of problem we are having in this country today? The level of poverty, the killings, the kidnapping, and the unemployment that is, the inflation that is so high, and all you can think of is how to remove subsidy, not to talk about how to grow the economy, how to ensure that you have more revenue from where you should have the revenue. You're not talking about your revenue leakages. All you are talking about is how do we just take, subsidy, and then everything, will fall in place. So my problem, or my suggestion is that government should first of all do the needful. That is the first thing first. Address the issues of corruption, which we know, which they know themselves. They have carried out a lot of studies. We all know what is happening. So this is why I believe that issue of subsidy, as necessary as it is, there's no government that has come in, before, since Babangida, like he says, when the price of petrol was about 48 kobo, 68 kobo, when they removed 18 naira. The labor were, but you always have to deal with this situation. And like I said, this government had the opportunity of presiding over what we are talking about.
If you were president, because you ran for president,
yes.
I mean, if you had won the election at the time,
yes.
what would you have done differently?
I'll look at the macroeconomic aspect of our economy, which is you talk about the oil and gas sector, talk about how the CBN is managing our foreign exchange, reserves, what they're doing to it. Believe you me, what you will save is more than what we are talking about that you are going to save from this removal of subsidy we're talking about.
Would you have removed subsidy if you were
when it becomes necessary? When it becomes necessary as an economy.
You think it's not necessary now?
What is necessary now is to check the corruption. I'm talking about the stealing going on in this government. That is more dangerous. It's more injurious to our economy than this subsidy we're talking about. I am not saying that what is happening is normal, at all. It's not normal. We want a situation where the economy will grow. But you can't grow the economy by loading it over the people. This is the most, it has a lot of multiplier effects. And the huge aspect of multiplier effects is on the masses. The well-to-do do not suffer from what we're talking about.
Let me bring back the Labour leader into the conversation. You do not agree that subsidy should be removed now. But in terms of the timing, when do you suggest?
We're not talking about now. We're saying you cannot do deregulation on importation of products. I don't know why we're not ashamed to be talking that we're importing refined product. The man who spoke on the other side used the example of those countries. Are they, as crude oil producers, importing refined product? Why are we not facing those realities? Well, what I have found out from what he's saying is just the elitist attitude to dealing with economic issues in Nigeria. In 1999, we presented, because history is very important, we presented privatization as medical cure-all. Once we privatize everything to 100%, Nigeria will become an El Dorado. We are now presenting the regulation and the so-called removal of subsidy from his speech as a medical cure-all. And it is embarrassing, to say the least, to give an impression that the economic woes, our inability to fix roads, which we know that people had in this country from the past years, we are here. And we hear the kind of money that has been budgeted, that has been wasted under the NDDC alone. Was it subsidy that made people take those huge sums of money and walked away with it? We are aware. Roads that were awarded in this country, money paid, not even laterite was taken to the road, and people had the money and walked away. And he's talking as if And he said it's subsidy that is not making the country move. In this country, the labor movement was stampeded by this same group of elitist people mounting it. Oh, it's the NLC and these people that is stopping us from having electricity everywhere. That the moment it's privatized, everybody will have light 36 hours in a day, not even 24 hours. All the promises that were shouted then, that once you remove government from electricity, these individuals that will buy it will bring in their money. 2 weeks, we subsidize them, the individuals, with 360 billion after privatization. On record, today, people buy their transformer, buy their poles, and these same individuals who have sold the electricity line, appropriates at their own, provides no light, charges people for darkness. Gas, we fully deregulated gas. And the promise was that once it's fully deregulated, it will make money and the price will come down. Gas kept rising. Today, Nigeria has the highest reserve of gas. Gas flaring is still on. And cooking gas that families use had jumped from 4,500 to up to 9,000 in 2 months.
All right.
Which is now creating even pressures in families.
Yeah.
And somebody is somewhere now mounting to tell us that the failure of good governance over the years that led it that we didn't build refineries, that will create jobs. If we are refining our product and people are arguing now on appropriate pricing, it will be a total different
We're totally out of time, but I must sincerely thank everyone that's waiting on this matter. From Mr. Johnson Chukwu, who has been with us virtually from Lagos. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I'm Mr. Uche Ekwe, and the head of international relations here at the NLC, at the Nigerian Labour Congress, and of course, Engineer Yabaji Sani, the national chairman and the presidential candidate of the ADP in 2019. Thank you so much indeed, gentlemen, for coming. We keep tabs on this matter for you. We stay on it and see how things come out in the end. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I'm sure. Bye-bye.